You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. Bellying up to the 9-foot homemade oak bar, pour yourself a cold one. My name's Chris, his name's Ed. This is Sox in the Basement. For fans, by fans, 30 minutes of Sox brought to you by Family Waterproofing Solutions. They're going to take care of you all this month of November, 10% off, in addition to if you mention Sox in the Basement, where they take money off already. So give them a call if you've got any leakage, seepage, water issues, foundational issues, you're worried about it, you're getting a new home, you want somebody to check it out, window wells, sump pumps, you name it, they handle it. 708-330-4466 or check them out at familydry.com. James Fox going to be on the show in just a little bit from Future Sox. We got a lot to get into as the offseason has begun, but Ed, we're trendsetters.
We are trendsetters, aren't we?
We are trendsetters, okay?
It's the first time anybody's ever said that about me.
Avisail Garcia became a free agent since our last show, and now everybody's talking about the possibility of Avisail Garcia being in right field for the Chicago White Sox. Who brought that up? Who brought that up first, Ed?
Oh, I believe I got a laugh out of you by suggesting maybe overall he might be the best right fielder out there for the White Sox to sign because they want a complete player who can play the actual outfield and not just be a hitter. And you laughed, and then we looked at it and we realized that, yep, Avi Garcia being in right field for the White Sox once again might just be the best thing that they can do.
And then we would have to go back and take a look. Imagine going back. Let's say they re-sign Garcia, and then you can go back to the first, I want to say, maybe first 6 months of Sox in the Basement way back in the day when he was still on the team, and the question was, as he was playing really well and Jose Abreu was playing about average, like, which one would you keep if you had to move on from one of them? And I have already admitted this. We've already done a show where I pointed out my worst takes, and I was like, get rid of Abreu and keep Garcia. But imagine he comes back and they go and they win a World Series, and he's like the MVP of the World Series. It'd be vindication for my really bad take. My bad take might actually prove to be good.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. They moved on from Garcia because he had that one really awful season where I think he was trying to prove that he was the all-star that he was the year before. And then he went out there, he went to Tampa Bay, he went to Milwaukee, and he realized, you know what? I just got to do me. I got to be a good, solid outfielder. I got to hit, for what I can hit for average-wise, power-wise, and all that stuff. And I'm just going to contribute. I'm not going to try and be a star. And he's been successful. And that's what they need.
Exactly.
And in a couple of years, because he's a few years younger, you might move on from Abreu and keep Garcia because one of them's going to retire sooner than the other one, probably.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I'm just joking about that. I truly believe that Jose Abreu was the right guy to keep, and I was wrong.
112%.
Back when I said what I said.
Nuts.
Another thing that I saw, though, and I'm going to steal this right off of their Twitter feed. Sox on 35th. Yeah. I love them. They got a great blog over there. Great guys. Jordan Lisowski, Joe Binder. They've been on the show before. They do a great job analyzing the White Sox. And
yeah, they do.
All we got here on Sox in the Basement is this podcast and then your blog. These guys, this is what they do. Anyway, they put out a tweet with one of these ridiculous, it's computer generated. It's like a ginormous iPhone with like a text message that looks like it goes on forever, right? Of somebody making an argument. And it said, which White Sox player are you defending like this? Basically saying, like, when you hear somebody talking about this player, which player is it that you get so upset when people are talking about? And I saw the tweet and I started going through it, and I've decided there are people out there that hate us right now because there were several people in there that were very angry about the suggestion that Jose Abreu is more what 2019, 2021 Jose Abreu was than 2020's 60 games. And I'm sorry, it's true. And that there is a slight decline. And then they're upset about the suggestion that you're probably going to have to trade somebody. And I see a lot of, you can't trade Andrew Vaughn. You can't trade Eloy Jimenez. You can't trade Yoan Moncada. The Yoan Moncada one, like, people are just all fired up about. And I think the question I have to ask is, what is the point of sitting around in the offseason trying to figure out how to make a team that was one-dimensional into a world championship team if you think we're going to keep every single player. Because if you keep every single player, you're going to get the same result, I believe, next year. I don't think everybody believes that, and I'm surprised by that, because I don't know if they were watching the same playoff series against the Astros that I was watching, but this team needs some adjusting. And you can only keep so many guys that are basically a DH first base and corner outfielder. You can only keep so many guys that do the same thing at the plate. You may need to make some adjustments to this team. And I know it's going to hurt, but I think we're running into a thing where there's a section of White Sox fans that are like, but I bought this guy's jersey. You can't get rid of him.
Well, yeah, and you mentioned my blog, which that's literally the blog that's sitting out there. The most recent installment is all about is it's going to hurt when Rick Hahn makes a trade this year, because if you look at the guys that you could do without, the Sox don't have anybody on the MLB pipeline top 100. They've got a couple of good prospects down there. Jake Berger is one of them. Yoelqui Cespedes is the other. That's really a name that you could look at, but they don't have guys that they can just pull together in the minors that are going to attract a huge return, or at least not what you need for a championship team, right? So I don't necessarily want to see, as a fan, I don't want to see Yoan Moncada traded, but if there's a blockbuster style trade out there where the Sox are going to become multidimensional or fill multiple holes, and it takes Yoan Moncada, and it's something that gets me excited and gets the Sox closer to being in the World Series and winning the World Series, then I'm going to trust that Rick Hahn, had a reason for picking Yoan Moncada versus Andrew Vaughn or versus Jake Berger. And I don't want to see the guy go necessarily. I think he's a really good player. I think he will rebound closer to what he was a couple years ago, and he's not, the guy that we've seen in the post-COVID Yoan Moncada era. And I don't necessarily want to see them trade Jose Abreu. I think he's a guy that's not going anywhere. In fact, I called him an untouchable in the blog. I said you can't trade the guy. He doesn't have enough value to the point where you're ever going to get enough back in return for what you losing him. But yeah, this idea that you can't, that the untradeable list is everybody except for, Zach Collins, Michael Rodolfo. I mean, that's who you're going to trade. Who are you getting for those guys?
We're just going to trade Michael Rodolfo. We're going to get the thing that's going to fix this entire team.
You're going to get an all-star second baseman for a guy who hit 245, granted with a lot of home runs last year, but struck out a ton and
is out of options. Is out of options, and you have to get rid of, basically, or put on your team.
Yeah, and he's out of options, and so you have to put him on your major league roster, whether he's ready or not. Yeah, that's not really how the trade market's going to play out for him. And I'm not saying that Adolfo doesn't get traded for something useful, but if you're expecting an all-star second baseman to show up on the south side of Chicago, and it's not Marcus Semien or Corey Seager playing out of position, and it's going to be in a trade, you got to be realistic. Yeah, it might be Andrew Vaughn. If you want Ketel Marte, and I've heard that name bandied about as a trade partner, the Diamondbacks are not giving up the face of their franchise for not a prospect, power-hitting minor league outfielder and Jake Berger. That's not enough for them to get rid of a guy that they've built their franchise around.
So I just want to name off a couple of names: Eloy Jimenez, Gavin Sheets, Jose Abreu, Andrew Vaughn. All right, those four names. Those are four names that are sitting out there right now that would take up three positions: first base, left field, and DH. And I know that everybody's like, oh, just put Vaughn in right. You have defensive deficiencies, and you have a lot of issues. And that is not, I know you want to keep everybody, but you have a log jam, basically. And the other thing I want to point out is the people that are sitting around saying, well, get a better defensive catcher because I'm angry about something that Yasmani Grandal does. Okay, well, now add him into that group of players. You still only have three positions, though, because he's your DH. And because you went with the defensive catcher. I think that's one of the cutest things that I've heard so far. Well, get that defensive catcher and then make just put Grandal at DH and he can fill in at first base and everything else. All right. So then you got Abreu, Grandal, Vaughn, Sheets, and Jimenez vying for three positions every day on your lineup card. You're going to have to break some eggs to make an omelet. It sucks. Let me tell you something right now. Like, Andrew Vaughn, I think, is going to be a star. Eloy Jimenez showed that he was a beast before the injury, and I think he's going to come back and be a beast, right? I think he's a 100%. Good player.
Yeah.
Jose Abreu is a leader who, while having declining skills, is still a very good player that any championship team would be happy to have on their roster. Gavin Sheets is a homegrown left-handed power hitter. You've been waiting for that for 20 years or so, maybe longer. In fact, I don't remember when we have ever done that. So much longer than that. Like all these different guys.
I've actually researched that and written a blog about how the Sox basically, you almost have to go back to Harold for that one. Robin Ventura, you know?
I mean, all of these guys, they're all really good players. The problem is that you're missing at certain positions that these guys can't play. And so you're going to have to make some moves, and it sucks. But it's inevitable. And I popped into 10614 Southwestern Avenue today, actually. Can you tell me what that location is? 3, 2, 1.
Cork and Carry?
Yes, I was over at the Cork today. And I was hanging out there. You can go see them at Cork and Carry Beverly along Western Avenue or down at 33rd and Princeton for Cork and Carry at the Park. The kitchen is down at the Park. They make spectacular food. They've got great pulled pork sandwiches, award-winning burgers, and it's just a nice, cozy neighborhood bar. Even when the season is over, it's a great place to go grab a bite to eat or meet up with some friends and have a drink. It's nice, it's chill, it's cool. And you can also head over to the pub Cork and Carry Beverly, the original at 106th and Western. And I've been telling you, I'm on a Guinness kick lately. And it's a great bar to sit down and have a Guinness. That's it. That's just a solid bar to sit there and get something on the rocks and just kind of enjoy. Any good
Irishman will tell you Guinness is light beer.
Yeah.
It's low in calories and it's refreshing.
It is. That's how I view it. All right.
That's how I view it too. I don't drink light beer. I drink Guinness when I want to drink light.
You know, if you get a nice night, you don't mind the briskness, they got a great outdoor patio, but they also have rooms to rent inside. They got that great bar area. It's an excellent spot to go out and meet new friends and see your old friends. Cork and Carry Beverly, Cork and Carry at the Park. See about all of them at corkandcarry.com. Joining me on the phone line right now from Future Sox, we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on down in the minors and if there's anything that's going to be done here in the next couple of weeks, maybe protect the guy in the 40-man roster. But we're also going to get into stuff going on with the Major League roster with him. He's been on the show a bunch of times before. James Fox on the program. How are you, James?
I'm good, Chris. How are you?
I appreciate you jumping on. Now, we haven't really heard from the Sox. And there's a possibility between me and you talking right now and this show coming out on Friday morning, there's a chance they do talk. Is it weird to you that we haven't heard something, that the World Series is over and we didn't hear anything from the team until after the World Series was over?
Yeah, I think it's strange. I mean, I think last year they met the media late and Renteria got fired and Cooper got fired, and like that was kind of the reason why. I mean, this year, like as soon as teams started getting knocked off, like they met with the media, and Hahn just like kind of didn't, which yeah, it's very strange. Now, I don't know that means that, like, somebody's about to take the fall or, like, something crazy is going to happen because, like, Tony La Russa's returning and, you know, as we record, James Speaker of The Athletic, we kind of just reported that his expectation is that that the entire coaching staff's going to return, too. So I thought maybe, like, Frank Menachino as a sacrificial lamb, even though, like, I think he's done a pretty good job. I mean, the team had a 109 weighted runs created plus. You know, as a squad, that's like third in the American League. But I mean, look, I had heard some rumblings that Tony wasn't, you know, completely on board with Menachino, but you never know who's making decisions up there. And the Boston Red Sox parted ways with their hitting coach, Tim Hires, who has, you know, some ties to Boston when La Russa was there, and Andy Barkett, who's already in player development in the White Sox organization. So I guess like that's something to monitor, but it seems like the coaching staff probably returned. So then at this point, like maybe Hahn just like wanted to wait and do one media availability instead of a bunch because, you know, they have to submit qualifying offers by Sunday, and, you know, they have a big decision whether to offer the QO to Carlos Rodon by then. Free agents officially become free agents today. We haven't heard any official word on that. And they do have options to either accept or decline, which, you know, I think we've kind of talked about. So maybe he just like wants to get all of it out of the way in one media session.
Carlos Rodon, you think he's a lock for the qualifying offer by Sunday?
I think it's organizational malpractice if they don't at least offer it. Now, I've heard both. As far as like whether he takes it or not, like I've actually heard both. Like to me, it makes sense for him to take $18 million if that's what he's offered, and then you hopefully replicate your previous season, and then you go out into the market like unencumbered with a qualifying offer next year, like kind of a la Kevin Gausman in San Francisco. I think that makes a lot of sense. I had heard that some people close to Carlos would urge him to just take $18 million if it's offered and kind of bet on himself. But look, if he turned it down knowing that he has 3 years and $70 million out there for him or something, nobody should be surprised by that. The White Sox just have to protect themselves. It's either a 1-year, $18 million contract for Carlos Rodon, or he declines it and you get a pick after the second round when he signs elsewhere. So, I know that they're probably a little bit budget conscious, but I just don't think you can lose him for nothing right now.
So I know that you've had a good chuckle over the fact that I was like Marcus Semien. I just want him to just go fix second base and go get a guy that hits over 30 home runs. And, money be damned, because I think that we have to spend. Now, on the other hand, we might agree a little bit on the fact this team is going to spend. What do you think they're going to do this offseason? Is this going to be, let's go out and find the cheapest option to plug some holes because we're pretty much tapped out? Or do you think that because Tony La Russa only has so much time and he's got the air of Jerry Reinsdorf, that this team is going to go out and is going to spend money and we're going to see some solid improvements on this roster going into 2022?
So they're definitely going to add. They're definitely going to spend money. They didn't hire Tony to not win. Jerry, I don't know how much longer Jerry Reinsdorf's going to own the White Sox. And look, this is like a leap of faith for Tony, right? So I don't think we're going to see the Jock Peterson, Eduardo Escobar, offseason. I think legit pieces are coming somewhere. Now they might be via trade if they don't want to spend as much. And we've talked about, and you guys have talked about on the show, just it's a weird roster with a lot of redundancies. So do they trade Eloy Jimenez? Do they trade Andrew Vaughn for, somebody that can play right or second every day that hits left-handed? I'd prefer they not trade Andrew Vaughn, but look, when your roster is this way, I think everything kind of has to be on the table to improve. I don't think they're going to just sign Marcus Semien and Michael Conforto and push the payroll to $200 million. But I also don't think they're just going to not spend either. I think the Kimbrel decision is an important one. I think they'll pick up that option and then they'll trade him, so you'll shed that money. I think if the option gets picked up, I think they have a pretty good inkling of where he's going, or a set of teams that are willing already. They definitely have talked about this prior to saying yes or no on that option. Then I think second base is a little more interesting, just because Cesar Hernandez was bad, but the option price isn't that much money. And if you look at the free agent class, unless you're signing one of these monster shortstops and moving them to second, there's not a ton of better options than Cesar Hernandez and I mentioned Eduardo Escobar. If Eduardo Escobar is part of the plan, I'm fine with that. I just, then you need a big upgrade in right field. So very long-winded, but yes, I expect them to spend. The payroll is going to be high. It's got to be, it has to be in the 170 to 180 range, you would think. This should be a top 10 payroll in baseball, probably bottom 10, or probably the bottom half of the top 10. But they have to spend, because while I think they're good enough, and I think the Braves kind of just showed us, some of the stuff that a lot of us were worried about is probably nonsense. You still want as good of a team as possible.
James Fox from Future Sox, I also wanted to have you on today because you've got your finger on the pulse of the minor leagues and things with the depth chart, and we're going to have to make a decision, or the White Sox are going to have to make a decision in about mid-November as to whether or not they're going to protect anybody before the Rule 5 draft. Now, in previous years, you'd have all these guys be like, we got to put this guy on the roster because, he's a big prospect and we don't know if he's going to end up being part of the World Series team. It's not really like that this year, though, is it? Is there a name that I should even be paying attention to, or do any of these guys that are Rule 5 eligible even matter?
Yeah, so I wouldn't be really that concerned about it. Cade McClure is a right-handed starter that had a pretty good year as a 6th-round pick back in 2017, I believe. They left him unprotected last year, and he wasn't taken. But this year, he made it to Charlotte. He's probably solid rotation depth, outside of your Jimmy Lamberts and Jonathan Stever, who just had, a surgery on his lap, so I don't know when he's going to be ready. I bet they add Cade McClure just to be safe. And then another guy we have in our top 30 is Jason Billis. He was a right-handed pitcher out of Coastal Carolina. Didn't really throw strikes in college. I thought he was going to be a reliever, like convert, but he throws hard and he's like really like decreased the walk rate too. So he's like one of their top 30 prospects as like a starter that could move fast if they moved him in the bullpen. So I think those two guys are possible. Like there's other names like your Lenyon Sosa's, and I just like don't think they're in the position to add guys like that. And like you're not really at risk of losing anybody like that either. So yeah, like in past years it's like, oh my goodness, they have to protect like these 5 or 6 guys. Like it might be 2 this time, and then maybe a surprise would be like, the catcher Carlos Perez that was in AA and then AAA. He's like one of their catching prospects that can actually play defense. So, maybe if like Yermin's gone and they trade Collins or something, like they add Perez to the roster and then sign up that catcher or 2 or something. But I would say those are like the 3 names to keep an eye on in regards to Rule 5. But as of right now, I mean, if the players get locked out, like there won't be a Rule 5 because that's in December.
Yeah, that's exactly true. And I'm going to finish up with a question about that with you. But before we get to that, settle something for me, because we know we have White Sox fans that are really into their team, and they're aware of names that are down in the minor leagues. And as they're sitting around trying to figure out, well, we do need help in right field and we do need help in second base. What about these guys? So explain to me, even though I kind of already know, and explain to the listeners why Yoki Cespedes and Yolbert Sanchez are not the fixes at second base and right field.
Because they're just like not ready to play Major League Baseball yet. I mean, like I think Yolbert, like if you told me Yolbert was on the Sox in the second half of the year, like I could believe that. Like I think he's like 24 and he's hit more than he was supposed to hit, and he showed some power and he's good defensively. Like that's a utility player. And like for $2 million or $2.5 million, like that's fine. And he doesn't really need a ton more seasoning. Like I think you send him to Charlotte as one of your middle infielders, and then if he's like the new Danny Mendick or something, like I think that's realistic. You can't start the season with him. I don't think. I think Romy Gonzalez, and for your Larry fans, and look, the last time we badmouthed Larry Garcia on a podcast, like he delivered like one of the greatest moments of like our lives.
You and I both did it, James, right before Game 3.
Yeah, and then he hit the monster homer. I just like think you have to let him explore the market. And if there's like 2 years and $12 million out there for him, like I hope he takes it, because while Larry's very useful, I don't trust him on a team managed by Tony La Russa. He's just going to play too much, and we know he's going to play too much. So like I think Romy Gonzalez is ready to, he's not going to start at second base, but he can be one of your bench bats that plays all over the place. Like I think he's earned a shot. Now, Yoki Cespedes is not ready to play Major League Baseball. I mean, he's struggling in the AFL right now, but it's good that he's out there. I think they could send him back to AA, and then, he plays at AAA, and then if he's, then at that point, like, if he really takes off, great. Then he's like an option for you, or like he's an option in a trade. But like, it's crazy to like, I get it in my mentions too. Like, oh, Yoki Cespedes is going to be their right fielder. Like, that's their plan. Like, that's not their plan. That's crazy. Like, that's not going to happen. But we're going to have to do the same thing once they sign Oscar Colas in January. Like, it's going to be like, oh, how soon is he coming? Is either heir apparent to Jose Abreu first? Like, no, they're just, they're just minor league signings at this point. So I would not be counting on those 2 guys. But, if you told me that either of them were on the team in the second half of the year, it wouldn't be terribly surprising, but probably more likely 2023, I would think.
All right, James, before I let you go, I got to ask your opinion on this. Ed and I are kind of the opinion that you could actually see them do things like maybe make a trade, or you're going to see some little minor moves that are made, but they're not going to go out and do anything free agency-wise until we see what happens with the CBA. Are you pretty much along the same thoughts? Do you think even a trade is impossible until we find out what the CBA looks like?
So I wouldn't be shocked if they moved Kimbrel prior to December 1st, just to kind of like get some clarity there. I mean, dude, the White Sox are weird. Like, I've had these same discussions where it's like, like you'll know the qualifying offer people, right? And I think there's going to be an all-time like high level of qualifying offers offered, like upwards of like 13 or 14 this year. Because if you just like look at the free agent class and the guys that are eligible, there's no reason to not offer it. So you'll have some clarity there. If like a handful of guys accept it, they won't be free agents. So then you'll know. I'm very curious, like you two, to see just how active like anyone is. I mean, the GM meetings are next week. A lot of the groundwork for deals is laid there, and then they get done at the winter meetings. There probably will be no winter meetings because, I fully expect the league to lock out the players. But I'm not the same doomsday as like some. Like they're gonna come up with a deal, and we're gonna have baseball, and we're gonna have it on time, and we're gonna have 162. I just, man, you're a union guy. Like deadlines spur action, and like it'll get done. I just think our off-season fun will be delayed, but it's delayed every year anyway. I mean, I feel like nobody signs anymore until after New Year's, so I think it'll be similar. But I'm just curious to see what happens over the next 4 weeks, because I think like if somebody does like jump out and like jump the market, like I could see the White Sox being the team that does something like that. Like they've done it, 2 off seasons ago. I mean, that was like what? That was late November for Grandal, and then they tried to land Wheeler, like within the next week. I mean, they had their targets. They were going to try to land both of them, and it was done fairly early. And if I recall correctly, I guess Hendricks was kind of later. But I mean, there were like rumors right away. We kind of knew who the White Sox targets were. So, I do think we start to hear some concrete information as to like who they're interested in, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Kimbrel move. But I mean, I would say across the sport, like November won't be that busy other than bookkeeping stuff and qualifying offers and stuff like that until there's like a new agreement.
James Fox from Future Sox, also over at Southside Sox. You can check him out on Twitter. He's a good follow in the offseason. He breaks things from time to time. Every once in a while, James is the first guy. So if you're going to follow somebody, at James Fox 917 on Twitter. And James, thanks for jumping on. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Chris.
We're getting some people that have thrown out names for our $1,000 guest bounty. A couple of names thrown out there for the $1,000 guest bounty. I have to check on this one because I just don't know whether or not, like when I get them, I don't know if they're real. I think that's the thing.
Yeah, that's the trick though, is that you can toss a name our way, but you got to be able to deliver. They got to be able to appear on the show.
I don't want to like announce it, but like I just got one that was given to me who's a former general manager in Major League Baseball. That would be just an interesting name to talk to. And he's been critical of Jerry Reinsdorf in the past. Like this, I think this would aggravate the White Sox if I had this person on. But I don't know if he's real. I don't know if this is a real name. I don't know if this is a real email. It was sent to me. This guy says this is his entry to win $1,000 for the most interesting guest of the off-season, for the best guest of the off-season. But now I have to go through the process of vetting and making sure I'm not just talking to somebody pretending to be this guy. So... like that's where I'm at on a couple different guests now.
So you're worried about being catfished in this process?
Yeah, I'm worried about being catfished. I don't want to be catfished.
Well, again though, but again, remember, Chris, the way people win is that the guest appears on the show, and then when we get to spring training, which hopefully will be on time, and the CBA won't prevent this, but but when we get to spring training, we're going to have the fans vote on who appeared on the show that was the best guest out of all the entries, and that's how the person's going to win the $1,000.
Yeah.
It's going to be by the listeners voting. So they can catfish you, but if they don't deliver,
I know, but you know me. I mean, we used to do morning radio back in the late 90s, early 2000s together. You and me. Remember that? And remember the stuff that I used to pull to mess with other radio DJs? Like what if this is just another podcast? Trying to make fun of the I think the worst in everything because I used to do it. Like I used to mess with other radio DJs. So I'm sitting there going, well, I mean,
I know. I know.
Like I immediately was like, well, how can I be messed with this? That's what I was thinking. Like, how can I be messed with? And so there will be a vetting, and I'll figure this out. And if it's true, then we'll have this guy on and several of the other ones that are already lining up. I think we're going to have a really interesting next couple of months once we're able to start rolling out some of these suggestions. If you have somebody you think you can get on this show, you could win $1,000 by getting that guest on this show. And all you have to do is reach out to us at soxinthebasement.com. There's plenty of ways to do it. You can leave us a voicemail with your information. You can use the contact page. Just reach out to us. Tell us about the guest. We'll hook it up. If they appear, you are entered. And at the end of the offseason, during spring training, the fans will vote, and the winner wins $1,000 from Elite Benefits of America. Butch Zemar over there wants to help your small company do better when it comes to insurance. You know, like get it at a lower cost, but keep the benefits up there. Help your employees. Make sure it costs less out of their paycheck. Make sure it costs less your contributions into it. Insurance is a really tricky thing, and it gets trickier year by year in this country. It's really just like an intricate spider web. You want to talk with an expert. Butch is going to find a way to get you to spend a little bit less and get more out of the whole thing. That's what he does. It does not hurt to sit down and talk with a Butch Zemar at EliteBenefits.net. Give him a call at 708-535-3006. Now, James Fox brought up some interesting points there. He always has good stuff. Like, I had him on because I wanted to talk about the minor league thing. And then he throws in I wouldn't be surprised if Frank Manchino got moved on. Like the White Sox could drop their hitting coach.
The Foxy sense is tingling, or whatever you want to say there. But
what does that mean?
I don't know. I mean, I would be. Look, we can argue again about what the Sox did or didn't do, and we've done that. You know, we've talked about their deficiencies, and in terms of pitching, in terms of hitting, and specific players where their struggles were. But were they bad overall offensively this year? No, they were actually pretty good. When you look at the overall team stats and when you look at their position in the majors, but I don't know. I mean, moving on from a hitting coach is something that I think teams do every once in a while. And if there are guys that, they were looking at having Menachino really develop this year that didn't make strides, or if there was something about the approach that they felt was off that was hurting the production from some of the players, then yeah, a new voice would be in it. And the only question is, will they go the Ethan Katz route and find Lucas Giolito's high school hitting coach?
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.